And I now give the floor to the representative of the Syrian Arab Republic.
شكرا السيد الرئيس.
Thank you, Mr. President. I deliver this statement on behalf of His Excellency, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Expatriates of the Syrian Arab Republic, Dr. Fayssal Mikdad. Mr. President, I addressed your Council today at a time when the eyes of millions around the world are on the United Nations, hoping that it would shoulder its responsibility to maintain international peace and security, to respond to the deep resentment, the deep pain that united the peoples of the world and human conscience to confront the genocide and brutal atrocities committed by Israeli occupation forces against the Palestinian people. For more than 6 months, we've been witnessing the criminal Israeli escalation in Gaza, in addition to repeated attacks against the territories of the Syrian Arab Republic and other Arab countries. This did not happen overnight. It is not an instance of self-defense, as the sponsors of Israel claim. It is a continuation of a long tradition of massacres, aggression, terrorism perpetrated by the Israeli occupation over decades. Unfortunately, this was met with silence by the Security Council. The United Nations has been unable to ensure the implementation of relevant resolutions due to the unlimited support by successive American administrations to Israel. It has become apparent that Israel has spectacularly failed to break the will of the Palestinian people and to achieve its military goals. This prompted them to bomb civilians with a level of brutality that is unprecedented. It prompted them to commit genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. They're seeking to escalate the situation and implode the whole region, to entrench the principle of might is right, to entrench the law of the jungle at the expense of international law and the principles and purposes of the United Nations Charter. This barbaric Israeli behavior is coupled with the United States paralyzing the Security Council. It is defying the will of the vast majority of Security Council members in particular and United Nations members in general. It used the veto right 4 times to prevent a ceasefire, to give the criminals of war the green light to continue with their massacres, with their destruction, with displacement. What is worse is that some Western states encourage Israel to continue slaughtering the Palestinian people mercilessly. Mr. President, the Syrian Arab Republic condemns in the strongest terms the Israeli aggression against the Palestinian people. It led to the martyrdom of more than 35,000 civilians. According to initial figures, it injured tens of thousands, most of them women and children. It killed at least 240 humanitarian workers, including United Nations staff. Most buildings in the Gaza Strip were razed to the ground, including hospitals and schools and other civilian infrastructure. Israeli occupation forces are threatening to invade the city of Rafah, which is densely populated, housing thousands of forcibly displaced. Syria holds Israeli occupation forces and their sponsors fully responsible for the escalation and its repercussion. We call upon the United Nations to stop this aggression, to lift the siege, to put an end to the systematic starvation of Palestinians, to stop forcible displacement, to hold Israel accountable for its crimes. Syria calls for the implementation of international resolution, calls for allowing the Palestinian people to enjoy its legitimate national inalienable rights, especially the right to establish its independent state on its territories with Jerusalem as its capital. Palestine must become a full member of the United Nations. In this regard, Syria condemns the use by the United Nations of the veto against the draft resolution tabled by the brotherly nation of Algeria to the Security Council to grant Palestine full membership in the United Nations. We stress that preventing the establishment of a sovereign Palestinian state will only perpetuate insecurity and instability as a result of the Israeli occupation. Mr. President, the crimes by the Israeli occupation in the Palestinian territories are closely connected to its crimes in the occupied Syrian Golan. Israel, the occupying power, persists for over 5 decades with its hostile policies against our people in the Golan. They've been committing all forms of violations of international law and international humanitarian law against our people in the Golan. Occupation forces persist in their expansionist settlement policies to entrench the occupation, to perpetuate the occupation, to impose an altering the demographic compositions through increasing the numbers of settlers, to steal natural resources, confiscate land, establish projects that have a serious impact on the lives of Syrians and their livelihoods. In addition, Israeli occupation forces are using the territories and the airspace of the Syrian Arab Golan as a launching pad for attacks, repeated attacks against Syrian territories to target civilian infrastructure, including residential buildings, in flagrant violation of international law, the Charter of the United Nations, Security Council resolutions, and the Disengagement Agreement of 1974. Israeli occupation forces have been launching hysterical attacks, reaching Damascus, the surroundings of Damascus, Deir ez-Zor, rural Aleppo, and the southern area. These attacks led to the martyrdom of innocent civilians. They injured many and caused significant material damage. Israeli disregard to international treaties and conventions went as far as targeting diplomatic premises. This was manifested in the targeting of the Iranian consulate in the Syrian capital Damascus through an Israeli air attack that destroyed the whole building and killed and injured everybody inside the building, Iranians and Syrians, in addition to a number of passers-by. This was a serious escalation and a flagrant violation of international conventions and norms that provide for the protection of diplomatic premises and staff working in those premises. In parallel to these barbaric attacks against Syria, terrorist groups operating in the northwest of Syria and Daesh launched attacks against civilians and military personnel. This proves once again the coordination between Israeli occupation forces and their terrorist operatives. In conclusion, Mr. President, Syria warns Israel and its sponsors of the risks of their hostile policies that push the region towards a complete escalation. We call upon the Security Council to shoulder its responsibility and to ensure the implementation of its resolutions, most notably Resolution 242, 338, and 497, to ensure the end of the Israeli occupation of occupied Arab territories. Syria once again stresses its legitimate right to defend its people, to defend its territories by all means provided for in international law. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of the Syrian Arab Republic for their statement. And